Okay, it's 1:02 Eastern here. We're going to get started. Thank you for everyone who is in attendance right now. We're going to be talking about providing top tier payroll services to your clients. This is part of the Outsourced series, which is a four-part webinar series in September, hosted by myself with FirmNexus. But today we are excited to be sharing the stage with Christina. So I'm going to turn on my camera here, Christina. If you want to join me, that would be great. Hello.
Hello.
So before we dive in here, I just want to make it clear that we do have some Canadian CPAs in the audience, and we'll be primarily talking about payroll in the US. However, I feel that a lot of the ideas that we'll be talking about and the reasons for using a payroll service are going to be applicable kind of across the world. And I'm very much excited to learn about you and kind of the insights that you have regarding the services that you provide to accounting firms.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
So let's just jump into today's agenda. We're going to do an introduction. I'll let Christina kind of take the mic and introduce herself. Then we're going to get an update on US payroll. We're going to talk about trends in business that are impacting payroll, best practices for using a payroll provider as a partner. And then we're going to talk about working with firms, an exclusive offer that Valor Payroll Services or Payroll Solutions is offering. So, Christina, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got into Valor Payroll Solutions.
Sure. So I, like most people that end up doing payroll, did not do it on purpose, but started in payroll in 2009 and have been doing it ever since in multiple capacities, service providers, PEOs, staffing companies. So kind of the A to Z of payroll. And then in 2020, it seemed like the perfect opportunity to quit my job and start a company because, nothing was going on at that point in the world. So in 2020, I set off on my own venture, which is Valor Payroll Solutions. And we are 3 years in now. We work with mostly small businesses under 50 employees. And of course, that allows us to partner with CPAs, bookkeepers, and accountants, as those are normally their client base as well. We work with clients all across the country, super consultative in our approach. Most of the time, we're working directly with the business owner, and they usually have no idea of any of the rules that come along with payroll. So we try and, keep them in compliance, make sure that we're not only answering their questions, but also just watching their payroll and alerting them if we see anything that may be a liability issue. So payroll's all I do. You can catch our payroll music video on YouTube. It's
It's on the third slide. Don't worry. It's on the third slide.
but yeah, so payroll all day over here.
Right on, right on. Well, I appreciate that. A little bit about myself. My name is Mark Stovel. I'm a CPA. I ran a virtual firm from 2017 to 2021. I sold it in September of that year, and now I work exclusively with accounting firm owners, CPA firm owners, to build better teams, tech, and a trajectory for their firm. I like doing these types of webinars to first learn more about what's out there to support CPAs in building their firms. But with you specifically, like I push my clients to kind of double down on their core offering. And typically for CAs and CPAs, CPAs and accountants, payroll is not their core offering. And so I'm really excited about this because this really complements how I work with my clients. And also my voice is about 3 octaves lower than it typically is. I have a cold, so for those that have heard me speak before, you might be wondering why I'm speaking this low, and that's the reason. So let's jump into an update on U.S. payroll. Christina, this is going to be kind of your wheelhouse. So, what are the biggest challenges um, facing business for payroll at the moment? Like, what are you seeing as kind of the biggest hiccups that businesses are running into?
Sure. Well, after COVID or during COVID, of course, one of the biggest things that happened was a huge increase in remote workers. And of course, during COVID, it seemed like the only option because people couldn't be face to face, but then employees did not want to give that up. So many businesses we've seen offer either remote or hybrid options, but that brings a huge increase in compliance when they're hiring people across the country, sometimes even just in a different city in the same state. Employers really don't always know the nuances that come with different places in the country. And that can be anything from registering for the tax ID to actually complying with laws. How often do you have to pay employees there? Do you have to offer paid sick leave? Do you have to offer some sort of retirement plan? So I think really that's the biggest thing that we're seeing now. Another thing that's really come into play in recent years is lots of tech. There's new tech all the time in the payroll space, from timekeeping, onboarding, and actually payroll processing. It seems like every week there's a new payroll company popping up. And so, it seems like every time there's a new one, businesses kind of flock over there, and then something new comes up and everyone flocks over there. So, businesses are trying to automate and streamline things. And there's some products on the market that are good, but a lot of times they kind of fall short. Like there's a very good sales pitch. And then, when they try to work with the product and integrate it with their business needs, it doesn't always meet the mark.
Right, right. I always say that, tech is not a silver bullet for the problems in your firm, problems in your business. They can either amplify or really compromise what's going on um, uh, within your business. So that's interesting that it's the same for payroll. So we talked about residual issues from COVID, trends in business structure, locations, and headcount. Are you seeing that businesses are trying to go leaner or kind of find
Well,
offshore support?
yeah, I think everyone's having a hard time hiring. So they may be leaner on purpose or just leaner as a result of not being able to find the right people. But I think overall businesses are trying to become more agile organizations. Obviously, again, going back to COVID, a lot of things changed, and all of a sudden people realized that they weren't prepared to take on a change or a challenge like that. So I think internally, a lot of businesses are trying to find ways to be more agile, so that if some crazy thing happens again, they're able to figure it out with how they have their business structured. I know a lot of places are seeing a decline in brick and mortar businesses. I know our downtown here, there's lots and lots of open office space. And just my opinion, but I think everyone's kind of trying it out right now. There's remote and hybrid and all these things. And I think people are just trying to see what works for their business or not. And we've already started seeing a swing, huge increase in remote. And now we're seeing it swing back, but more towards a hybrid, right? Because employees are just kind of refusing to go back to the office full time if they have had the opportunity to not have to do that. As far as headcount, I'm not sure. I think it's a tough market right now, and I don't know where that's headed.
Do you see some of these businesses that are kind of moving to a hybrid structure and or potentially like fully remote? Are you seeing compensation packages changing? Maybe I've heard that some businesses, because they're saving on rent or lease space. They're you would think that they'd be paying their employees more, but not really. But they're offering like to help them furnish their home offices. Now, this is kind of a late conversation because we're 3.5 years post pandemic. Um, Maybe we're still in the pandemic. I'm not sure. Um, but what kind of compensation package changes have kind of floated to the top with some of your clients?
So one of the things that we're seeing for businesses that are going remote and hiring across the country is we're starting to see businesses say, oh, well, we're going to base your pay on where you are in the country, your cost of living.
Right.
Um, Obviously, that's not super popular with employees, especially once they have the option to work remotely. They all of a sudden may decide they want to, go move to the country in Idaho, but that's going to come with a $20,000 pay decrease. So, that's one thing that we're seeing just, and businesses are debating, is this fair to employees to base the salary off of the cost of living, or should we base it off of our home location and market wages there? Um, I have yet to see businesses say, oh, we're saving $50,000 a year. We're gonna just pass that right on to our employees. Haven't seen that, but we do see more like unique pay codes, I guess. They'll pay for a gym membership or just kind of random stuff, but nothing really substantial other than, again, businesses kind of trying to decide how they're structuring their pay when they have people across the country.
So, what kind of industries deal with the most complex issues within your client base?
Um, the ones that we see that have complex issues, one is going to be restaurants, just with the tip credit makeup, overtime on tips, and then reporting tips on the 941s. If you're not familiar with those types of things, then that can become a burden if you're doing, payroll for restaurants. Um, Churches or religious organizations have unique things that come along with them, especially with ministers, nonprofits. They have exemptions from federal unemployment tax, but then for state unemployment tax, each state makes up its own rules. So they may not be liable unless they have 4 employees for 20 weeks, or if they, each state kind of has their own liability determination for state unemployment for nonprofits. Um, and then one, I just had someone this morning talking about payroll for a construction type business. They want everything job costed, and there's not a ton of payroll softwares that have that capability or robust capabilities so that they can accurately determine how much a job costs versus how much they profited from it, and things like
Right.
that. Um, and then really not necessarily an industry, but anyone who's doing remote work. That is by far the biggest thing I'm seeing right now is just businesses with remote workers. It's causing so many issues. Um, Mostly people just don't know what to do, so they don't get them set up correctly, and then it snowballs. They didn't put the right work location, so they got taxed in the wrong state, and then they filed a year's worth of returns, and now the employee gets a W-2 with Pennsylvania income tax, but they're in California, and they say, hey, what happened? And then they have to go all the way back and figure out what happened, when it happened, and amend everything. So that's not really an industry, but that is, just kind of across the board. Anyone with those remote workers, if they're not sure what they're doing, it's becoming a big issue pretty fast.
Yeah, yeah. So, what are the biggest red flags for state and federal governments? Like, I bring this up because when we talked about this earlier, you and I, in terms of what what issues can I kind of get away with preparing payroll, and the same goes with income tax. Like, there are 90 million businesses in the U.S. plus or minus, and how do you police all of that? And the answer is you can't. And so, and when I was running my firm, I would take on payroll clients or say that I could do their payroll, knowing full well that the issues that I might cause or things that I wouldn't catch wouldn't be a big issue, and that I was okay with some errors or issues kind of going through, as long as like people got paid and the general requirements and compliance requirements were met. I was okay dealing with some of the risk around that. Um, Same with income tax. Like, the red flags that would kind of pop up on the government's radar is like, okay, are there big swings in income and or expense categories from year to year? And that would be the first trigger for an audit or an inquiry to learn more. And then there were special or particular expense categories that always had noise or kind of personal expenses in them, and one being vehicle expenses for companies. So what kind of red flags are you seeing um, state and federal governments kind of trigger on in payroll?
Hmm. Do you want to talk about ERC or you want to leave that off the table?
Well,
No.
so the latest development with the ERC is that the IRS isn't processing anymore at the
Correct.
moment, correct?
Not any more new ones. They're
New
positive
ones, okay.
ones. So if it's already in, great. Obviously that's a huge thing right now. And I don't know that the IRS even knows what they're looking for when it comes to those as far as
Yeah,
what's fraudulent or not. But of course, if you're a business that has filed that, go back and check and make sure that you really were eligible and do your homework and be ready for an audit. But as far as normal payroll goes, uh, one of the biggest things that you should avoid at all costs is not filing 941s. It's by far worse than not paying the tax, because by not filing the form, if you file a 941, then the IRS expects one every quarter, even if you don't have
mm,
wages. So if you miss one of those, they're going to estimate taxes for you, and there's huge penalties. To them, not filing it is as if you're trying to hide the liability. Whereas if you just don't pay it, you've already said, hey, I owe you X. I don't have the money. So, if you're in a situation, or your client's in a situation where they don't have money to pay the taxes, not filing the tax return is definitely not the way to go. Make sure you get those tax returns in and then deal with the payments separately if you need to, work that out with the IRS. Another big thing that we're seeing right now is, there's contractor versus employee, and it's kind of picking up pace almost, where we're seeing, California put in their own rules around that. And
yeah,
then recently Biden had proposed some new language around that. And like you were talking about, what am I going to get caught for? We see small businesses all the time misclassify employees as contractors intentionally, saying, well, I don't want to pay the tax. And I try to explain to them that it doesn't just go away. You're now making your worker pay your employer
yeah,
taxes, the Social Security and Medicare. And then if they get hurt on the job, they don't have workers' comp. So they're going to file a claim, and then you're going to get busted for misclassifying them. Or if you terminate a contractor that should have been an employee and they try to get unemployment, the state isn't going to have any wages for them. And they're going to call you and ask, did this person work for you? And you're going to have to explain yourself. So, employee versus contractor, to date, I have not seen a ton of businesses get in trouble for misclassifying, but with the increase in these bills and different definitions, and it seems like we're trying to break that down and work on that. What else do we have? I don't know of any other necessarily red flags. Of course, in payroll, exempt versus not exempt, we're looking at changing that again, increasing
yeah,
the minimum wage or the minimum salary for an exempt employee. But really with payroll, I think the biggest thing is just taxes. File your taxes on time, pay your taxes on time. The biggest one is a 941 tax payment because that's, money that you withheld from employees in addition to your employer taxes. And that'll shut a business down. I mean, if they don't file the returns or make the payments, the IRS is going to tack on those penalties and interest quickly. And it snowballs very, very fast when you have any sort of tax issue.
Right, right. Now, the reason that um, I bring this up is because there is complexity in the payroll space, and it when I got my CPA license, I didn't do any formal training with payroll, none, like none whatsoever. And so um um it was it seemed easy enough, when a client was like, "Hey, can you do payroll?" I'm like, "Absolutely, I can do payroll, no problem." Um, but I didn't understand the complexities that, we've just kind of gone through, that there is a lot to keep your finger on in terms of the pulse. And so when so what issues, if firms are coming to you and saying like, "Hey, you know what, we're kind of in over our heads," are there kind of issues, general issues that firms will bring to you to help fix or correct with what they've been doing? Or is it just generally like, "You know what, we don't have the time or expertise for payroll, can you help us?"
Sure. Um, so again, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here, but they start doing payroll. All of a sudden, this client is hiring remote workers. All of a
Yeah.
sudden, there's all these tax issues. That's definitely one that we are seeing where the start payroll was easy, sure, no problem. And then it just grows into this monster that they either can't deal with or don't want to deal with. Another thing that we see is firms will say, yes, we can do your payroll, but then whatever payroll service the client has already, they just say, sure, give us your login. And then they do the payroll, they do the admin, they key,
Mm,
the employees in, they key the hours, but then they're trying to manage Gusto and QuickBooks and Paychecks and all these platforms. And it's really hard to efficiently manage payroll when you have it in so many different places and on so many different systems. But we see that a lot with the firms that we talk to. Yes, we can do your payroll, no problem, but they're working in 4 or 5 systems at a time. And then again, circling back to staffing issues right now, if you're going to offer payroll, ideally you want someone in-house that knows payroll. On the front side, it's fairly simple. You enter hours, people get paid. But then what happens when there's a question or a tax notice um, or a huge penalty and your client is going, what the heck did you do? All of a sudden, the revenue that you made from the payroll just goes right out the drain if you have to start paying penalties and interest because you messed something up or didn't know what you were doing. So, kind of it can be for a number of reasons, but I think those are the biggest things. Just the firms that have been doing payroll all of a sudden trying to deal with multi-state if they're not familiar with that. And then firms just kind of saying yes to everything and then ending up with this Frankenstein monster of a payroll offering that they have, which is really just doing the admin work for the client.
interesting. So we talked about multiple jurisdictional businesses, current level of turnover among businesses, like you mentioned, harder to find people to hire, new and different benefits that companies offer. We kind of got into that a bit. Do you see a trend? Like, are we going to see more progressive benefits being offered? You mentioned gym memberships, like lifestyle benefits that might appeal to more progressive, I guess, employees. Like the whole, you're getting a wage. You should be happy with that. I think the days are long gone
Yeah.
with that, and that especially if they're being paid minimum wage or like on the lower end, it's just not cutting it anymore. Uh, like, are you kind of plugged into some progressive companies and what they're offering in terms of benefits?
Sure. I think one of the it's not really a new benefit, but one thing that keeps coming up is employees want more time off or flex time or 410s. Um, this whole work-life balance. For a year, everyone finally had their life back, more so than work, during COVID. And then it all, they try to just 180 and take it all back. And employers are just
Mm,
saying, no, like we're not having it. And so it's interesting because I have seen I know people that have taken lower paying jobs because they have more freedom, more time off, the flex time, work from home, or any combination of those things. So that paycheck, the wage itself, just is not necessarily the driver anymore in employee decisions. Um, with benefits, of course, I don't I don't know if we ever really got past ACA. Like it seemed like once ACA rolled out, it became unaffordable for businesses to offer
yeah.
health coverage, even though that was the purpose and the mandate. So we do see, smaller businesses offering things like HRAs or telehealth plans where they don't have to have major medical, but they can have telehealth coverage where they can just go do a telehealth visit whenever they need to and don't have an out of pocket or have a really low out of pocket. um so the major medical, there are some people that still want it, but I know especially in our market or under 10 employees even, it's not always an option. But businesses are now trying to find alternatives or ways that employees can have some sort of health coverage where they're not paying $100 to go to urgent care every time they need something. And we've even seen PTO plans being rolled out for part-time employees, which
Oh,
historically doesn't really happen. But we've actually had a few clients starting to add those on where it's like a prorated amount for PTO depending on the hours worked. But again, even part-time employees are like, hey, sometimes I need to not be here, but I can't afford to not make, my wage. So it's just a lot more employee focused, a lot more work-life balance focused, kind of letting the employees run the show in a sense.
like treating them like humans and not peasants.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. I didn't
Crazy.
strange to me.
So let's talk a little bit about onshore and offshore teams. Obviously, with the offshore teams, um, you know, US based payroll doesn't come into play. But have you seen you know, I guess let's back up. So your clients are small businesses, small
Mhm.
mid-sized businesses, and then you work with accounting firms, bookkeeping firms that offer payroll as a service. And so you also do the payroll for those accounting firms and bookkeeping firms. So not only the services that they provide, but the actual payroll service to their firm. Um,
Mhm.
how how does that kind of come in, like with the offshore and onshore, how does that um come into like capacity planning? Do you talk much with these firm owners or with their clients around, planning for future hires and what that will kind of look like moving forward?
I mean, that's not really something we normally delve into in our client base. If they are using offshore talent, we are seeing a lot of people use like Upwork and like freelance websites where they can pay someone in any country to where they don't
Yeah.
have to have a separate payroll engine for that. Because once you have someone in another country, now you're talking global payroll, even if it's US and only Canada, for instance. Like now you need a payroll software that does global payroll. So I have seen people use the freelance websites to be able to hire lower cost labor in different countries, but not have to really deal with getting them paid. But other than that, we don't dig in too deeply to that.
Okay. Okay. So let's get into best practices here. Um, Now, when I ran my firm, I just didn't do payroll very well. I so I left a big four in 2014 and was actually a controller for a manufacturing company for 3 years before I launched my firm full time. I was in charge of payroll and the whole HR function at that manufacturing company because whoever pushes the whoever pays the employees is the default HR person. And so I was in charge of HR and payroll. And so I did do payroll for 3 years. I used Ceridian. Um, but I don't, the training was basically on the job. And if there was any issues that came up, it was me on the phone with one of the customer reps saying like, okay, I screwed up. I did this wrong, and I know I processed payroll incorrectly many times, not to a significant amount, but just like, there's rules around statutory holidays and leaves and allowances for bereavement or whatever it may be. And I know I screwed up multiple times, but it gave me the confidence to offer it as a service in my firm, and the idea of getting a payroll partner provider never really crossed my mind. It was like it was either I was going to do the payroll or I was going to tell the client that I didn't do payroll, and there would be like, well, maybe I'll go find another firm that offers payroll. And there was a little bit of hesitancy to direct them somewhere else, so I took it on. Again, not offering a stellar service and potentially exposing myself and my client to penalties and interest, but from the government. So, best time to find a payroll provider, in your opinion, when would that be?
I mean, I think that depends on your plan. So if you plan to offer payroll and want that to be a revenue stream, you really have to consider what is it going to cost to staff that position and what happens when you don't have someone on staff for that position. So internally, if you are going to offer it, are you going to be the one doing it or are you going to hire someone? If you're going to hire someone, how many payroll clients do you need, to break even or actually be profitable with payroll? So, if that's your long-term goal and you want to keep that in-house and you do the numbers, maybe you don't need a provider.
Mm,
But if you are doing it like you said, I don't want to tell them no. I don't want them to go look somewhere else. I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't plan to hire a payroll expert internally. I would say you need a payroll partner before you start offering payroll as a service. You can definitely get by for a while, like as you know, but inevitably something will happen. A question will come up, a notice will come in, and you will be spending your whole day trying to figure that out. And it's going to eat up your time. It's going to eat up your resources. So just kind of depends on your vision and what your plans are. But I would definitely not suggest just going for it without having a person internally to back it up.
yeah, absolutely. Um, I when I did add payroll to my services, I I felt that it was an easy kind of revenue stream. But when I discovered after getting a little bit of time and experience under my belt, I was undercharging significantly for payroll because I didn't allow for those complexities to kind of come up. You know, it was easy. Oh, you only have 3 employees, they're hourly, no problem. It's going to be, this amount. And then I didn't take into account terminations or new hires or, understanding statutory holiday pay or at the year end when all the filings needed to be completed. And when there was issues that, they sent me the wrong number of hours, how do I fix that? How do I uh, do all those things? I was grossly underpriced. And that's something that I want to caution firm owners around. And that didn't really click for me until I was speaking to my payroll software provider. And they wanted me to bump up in a tier. They wanted me on their better platform, obviously charging me, 3 or 4 times more what I was paying at the lower tier. And the guy asked me, well, how much are you charging for payroll? And I shared with him, and he's like, you are way underpriced in the market. Like that is, and I thought I was doing my client a favor, but by not being experienced and exposing them to more risk, I was actually doing them a disservice. And so for firm owners, I say, make sure you charge like a lot for payroll to, number one, pay someone who's qualified, either internally or externally, and to make sure that you're mitigating your risk. There is risk around payroll.
Yeah.
So going back to I didn't want to say no. I didn't want to point my clients to a different firm that might offer payroll. So what's kind of the how do we manage that conversation with a potential with a client that wants payroll services and we're using like a partner like yourself? Like, how do we manage that conversation instead of saying, oh no, we outsource payroll? What kind of approach do you recommend?
I would just stay away from the word outsource,
Yeah.
because then it sounds like it's completely over here. And ideally, what you want is to build this vision with your client that, hey, we have this payroll partner. And what does that partnership look like? Well, we have access to your payroll system. We have a line of contact with the payroll provider. We can, talk together, like for S corp owners, what your year-end payroll needs to look like. So it becomes this partnership, this triangle with, the firm and us and the client, and it should work very well. We get to be the experts in what we do, and they get to be the experts in what they do, and then you as the client win because now you have two experts instead of me being an expert at taxes or accounting and then me just muddling through payroll. And for our partners, we give them options. Some of our partners want to include payroll, so they say yes, we offer it, and they have it in their proposal, and they charge the client for it, and then we just bill the partner. And so then they still have that stickiness factor where it's under their umbrella, they're billing for it, but it is truly outsourced to us. And then we have partners that, just basically do a referral, like, hey, we don't do payroll, but here's who we work with really well. And that also seems to work pretty well. If you have that relationship of trust with the client already, they're usually going to take your advice to at least check us out, if not use us. If you say, hey, we know, like, and trust them, would you be open to having a conversation with them? And we never try to hide that we're a separate business or anything like that. We just use the term partner most of the time. And again, we truly partner and help in the process and, with the relationship of all parties. And it works well. And then, we do our thing, they do their thing. The client's always happy. And I think the biggest thing is just if the client is, if they send us something that should go to the accountant, no problem. We just forward it, right? We don't,
Yeah.
oh, that goes to them. And you just make it work, be the bridge. And then the client is happy. They have basically one point of contact, because they're going to work with the payroll company far more often, usually, than their CPA. So we kind of just become the main point of contact. And if we need to pass anything along or ask a question, we just go ahead and do that behind the scenes.
Right, right, right. So what kind of now we're going to get into like the process or some of the kind of step-by-step stuff. So what kind of documentation is needed kind of on the front end in terms of um like let's talk about me, I have a CPA firm. I want to start I have a handful of clients that I do payroll for. Things are growing. I'm finding out that payroll is not my most profitable revenue stream. What does that look like coming to you? And then how do I kind of transfer my clients off to you?
Sure. Which we honestly try to make it as easy as possible. So if you already have clients in a system and we can get access to that system, we will actually go in and grab everything that we can, from the system. So employee data, year-to-date payroll data, tax payments, you name it. And then that also makes it easier on the client because then they only have to do a couple of, e-signed forms to go.
Right.
So we partner, we get logged in, we get what we need, and we put it in our system. If that's not an option, we'll just walk you through what we need, and then we really will ask you, hey, we need A, B, and C. Can you provide that to us, or would you like us to go ask the client? So again, maintaining that kind of partner dynamic where we're working together behind the scenes, and it, should be smooth for the client to where they don't feel like, oh, I don't know who's asking me for what. Most systems that you're processing payroll on, you can give someone a third party login to. But again, even if that's not the case, we'll still just work with you to get the data, and we put everything into our system. So there's no setup required on the firm side. We do all of the onboarding and setup. And a lot of times we will end up finding things in payroll as we're moving everything over. But same process, we'll let the accountant know or CPA know first. Hey, I saw your S corp owners have Section 125 deductions. Was that on purpose or no? Okay. Try to work it out, and then obviously at some point we have to tell the client, but it's usually like, hey, we found this, we fixed it, and they're like, great, lovely, don't know what you're talking about. But you'll be surprised, once if you do move clients over, you may be surprised the things that we kind of find, little odds and ends on there where you're like, oh, I didn't know that. But we'll fix it too.
Right. Do you find, so for those clients that kind of like use you as, for lack of a better term, like a white label provider, do you see a lot of these firms marking up your services? And I guess what kind of billing arrangements do you have with the clients with accounting firms that are either quote unquote, white labeling your service or just using you as kind of a standalone partner?
Yeah. I mean, the billing, again, we try and be flexible and structure it whatever works for the firm. So that can be where we bill the firm usually once a month for the prior month services. They will usually upcharge. That's usually the point of us billing the firm directly, is they still make a revenue spread on it without doing any work. But we do have firms as well that just say, hey, just bill the client, and we'll maintain our relationship, but I don't want to touch payroll at all. I don't even want payroll fees flowing through my firm. And we can do that as well. So, we really just kind of structure it depending on what the firm wants, what type of relationship they want to have with us. Is payroll your service that you're billing for or not? And just go from there.
Right on. Let's move to the next one. So integrating your services with the bookkeeping, what kind of, I'm a process driven guy, so I kind of like to know, how is this going to look for a firm? So I'm assuming that some of the clients use time trackers or, provide you information. Does that usually go straight to you, or does it go through the firm at times, or how does that typically look? And then what do you return to the firms to do the journal entries?
Sure. So as far as data flow goes, again, we have options. We do have some firms that insist on being kind of the admin person, and they want to be the one that logs in and makes changes, hires employees, enters the hours. And we are totally fine with that if you want to do that. But I think a vast majority, they kind of take the back seat and let us just work directly with the client. So usually data will flow directly to us, and that can be in different ways. We have an integrated timekeeping and onboarding system. So clients that want to use that, everything just happens automatically. But we also have clients upload documents to us, to enter a new hire. If they have under 5 employees, we allow them to text or email hours, and we'll key them in for the client. So it just depends. Again, we try to be flexible. We try to keep it efficient. That's why, we limit, we're not going to key in 50 hours or 50 employees hours. But if it's a couple, like, no problem, we're in there anyway. And then as far as the journal entries go, we do have a direct integration with QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online. And then for the clients we work with, that's the vast majority are using one of the two, usually QBO. But we can also just provide like a CSV export of the GL data if they prefer that, or if they're not using QuickBooks. So we do, we can input all the GL information into our system and get those reports or send it over to QuickBooks directly.
Awesome. Awesome. We're just kind of getting towards the end here. So working with firms, exclusive offer, you do have a partner program. So I love this because it turns payroll into a stress-free, profitable revenue stream, which when I look at my firm and the payroll that I did, it was none of those things. It wasn't. It was, I remember I went on a cruise in the Caribbean, and the only time I pulled out my laptop was to deal with the payroll issue. Um, 14 days, yeah, I had to pull my laptop out twice. And I just see, so much benefit around not dealing with that because payroll is the one thing that you can't get wrong. With most of our work as accountants, we're looking, retroactively, and we can take our time, whether it's bookkeeping or tax prep. Like we have windows. There are deadlines, but we have windows that we kind of work with. But like payroll, the window is very short, and if it's missed, it's bad. Employees don't get paid. People are angry. You look like an idiot, and you screw that up once or twice, and you're done. As a service provider. So I love this idea. Tell me a little bit about what you can offer firms that want to join the partner program.
Sure. If anyone's interested, like I said, we really try and tailor our approach to you to where we're meeting you where you're at with, how you want to partner, how you want to roll it out to clients. But like you said, the biggest thing is we completely take the stress off of your plate, the deadlines off of your plate, the compliance off of your plate. And then at the end of the day, if something goes wrong with payroll, it's not detrimental to your firm, because I know it sounds crazy, I'm a payroll person, but things go wrong with payroll all the time. And it's not just saying that we're over here making mistakes all the time, but you have all these different tax agencies, you have employees, you have your clients, you have internal employees. So inevitably things will go wrong. That's all outside of your purview now. We handle everything. And with our partners, we will do your personal, like in-house payroll for free if you are working with us and you have mutual clients. And then we also have some different options for, revenue sharing. Like I said, we can bill the firm directly, you mark it up. And then we have kind of a tiered system of that rev share depending on how many mutual clients that we have. But again, at the end of the day, we make it super easy. If you already have payroll going, we do all of the legwork to get everything over, including balancing and reconciling everything. And then once that's done, you can just continue to operate. You don't have to say no to anybody, but you don't have to deal with it. You do not have to deal with it. And that's
Yeah,
the beauty of it. You can focus on what you do. We'll be the payroll experts.
fantastic, amazing, amazing. Just we have about 10 minutes left. I wanted to open it up to anyone. If you have a question, please drop it in the Q&A window. We'll just see if any questions roll in. But Christina, thank you so much for sharing this time with us. For those that are in attendance, we do have this recorded, and I'll be posting it within the next day or so, and then sending out a link so people can review and capture that link to your website to sign up and get additional information.
Okay,
So
thank you.
if yeah, if there aren't any questions, then we'll leave it here. Again, thank you so much. Pleasure. I enjoy your no BS approach to things. Let's get right to the chase. Payroll is complicated. And like you said, on the front end, it's easy. You got hours, people get paid, but on the back end, there can be a lot of intricacies that can trip you up and expose you in a significant way if you're not careful. All right. Well, thank you again. And thank you everyone that has attended, and watch your inboxes for a recording. Okay.
Thank you so much, Mark.
All right. Take care.
Bye bye.